So can everyone see the screen okay?
Yep, got you, mate.
Yep, good. So thanks for coming along. My name's Gavin. We've got Alex, who's helping also, or me and Alex are doing this together. So we're here to talk about really fundamental lead generation strategy and how to grow your qualified leads by using a tool that we've developed called the Client Maturity Scale. And it's really important for getting an understanding of your market, and it makes everything far more targeted. And we'll talk about that in a second. So to give you some, we'll keep flicking through. So my name's Gavin. I've been in SaaS sales since 2015. I'm the founder of Sales Market Fit, and I help B2B startups or SaaS tech companies develop and implement their sales and lead gen strategy. I've been responsible for more than $30 million in SaaS sales when I was working for a company, and also now helping clients as well. And Alex?
Yep, good everyone. I'm Alex. So I founded Market Science, worked with Gav many years ago, and had 7+ years, I guess, working across growth marketing, sales, enterprise lead generation, and sort of working across now over about 150 different startups. So founders of all different levels, small, medium, large, and sort of helping those guys either go to market or start scaling. And I guess my experience has started and still goes with lead generation. I think it's an easy thing to understand, but it takes a lifetime to master. So hopefully today Gav and I will cover a bunch of things that we've learned the hard way and really figured out from the ground up. So hopefully you guys can implement and start using yourself.
Thanks, mate. So we're monitoring the chat. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to just chuck them in the chat and we'll get to them. We'll pause. We got plenty of time today, so we're probably not going to run to the hour. So we can answer any specific questions that may come up. And again, if there's a concept you don't quite understand, again, just call it out and we're happy to go deeper into it as well. Because one of the things that we find is, if you think about the Simon Sinek, start with why, there's why, how, and what. Most people, it's hard sometimes to communicate the why it's important. So we really want to make sure that we address that in anything that we do. So the outcomes of this webinar we want to help you achieve is we want to highlight some of the common lead gen mistakes and why they occur and really how to avoid them. We want to give you a framework to begin creating an effective lead generation strategy, and how to be far more targeted in your lead generation efforts. You know, think about like being a sniper. We want to have one shot, one kill as such, is one message to deliver an intended outcome. And then we want to share with you how to bring sales and marketing together using the Client Maturity Scale. I have a background in enterprise SaaS sales. Alex has a passion for marketing for tech companies, and I think there's a healthy conflict or a healthy tension that comes across with both areas working together. Would you agree with that, Alex?
Yeah, for sure. I think lead generation is probably the area of overlap where sales meets marketing, and by far like the company meets the market. So I think it's this like ultimate pathway in between the two. And I think it can be done one-to-one with sales, which we'll get to in a sec, or it can be done one-to-many. But I think having that balance of the two to make sure we're actually getting leads, but not exhausting ourselves or spending too much time on direct human resources.
Okay. So we want to just talk about some common lead gen mistakes that happen inside businesses that we see on a common occurrence. So before we ran a boot camp that we'll talk about a little later, we did a series of interviews with some founders, and the overwhelming problem that come out from these interviews is most businesses, particularly early stage, when they're wearing many hats and there's many things to do, is they treat lead gen like a task and not applying the right strategic thinking to it to be able to be far more effective over time. Because they're treating it like a task or not paying the right amount of attention, they're having the wrong expectations. So there's no empathy in thinking about their intended audience as much as what they should. There's no prioritization of lead generation. The best way to get lead generation results is consistent effort over time. And that's really the secret to lead gen at the end of the day. Now, their sales and marketing aren't aligned. Both Alex and I have been in a company when sales and marketing weren't aligned, and its lead generation was just completely ineffective. Again, all companies try to scale too quickly as well, and don't learn the lessons or walk before they can run, or the crawl, walk, run approach. Alex, you want to do the last ones, mate, from 7 onwards?
Yeah, for sure. So I think so people aren't consistent enough. So I think lead gen is compounding. So we talk a lot about, it's almost like saving money or sort of exercise, where there's no real single event that's going to revolutionize your business. There's not going to be this one webinar or this one email campaign or this one sort of landing page you do that's going to totally change your sort of business. It's going to be a probably combination of a period of time of which we'll get to in a second, but short, long-term, and medium-term strategies to really make sure they compound over time, getting people from knowing that you exist all the way up until sort of becoming a raving fan. I think the other thing is not considering the target audience. I think this is a never-ending topic of people who, do a blanket email to say an entire industry versus hyper-focused particular people, particular roles, understanding exactly what they need, what they don't have, and sort of making sure that we're hitting the right message home to them. Sort of think they have access to the whole TAM as a potential client. So yeah, so initially people's pitch decks, or I guess in startup decks, it'll say, we've got potentially 5 million people in Australia that we can go after. And the reality is that, those early adopters, or those innovators, you're looking at like 2.5%. And then of that, you're looking probably 2.5% of that are actually in the right time to buy and have the risk appetite to take you guys on. And it's really trying to narrow down as far as possible, because there's a lot of people that just won't be ready for it. And we do have the negative effect that if we push too hard, we can start disrupting our brand in the market as well. And then also not leveraging the competitive advantage. So I think that one is too, people going out with very broad value statements. I'd say that's a huge, which I've done myself. It's that we go to market and say, hey, we can help do things for you, or we can help streamline your business, right? Which doesn't really mean anything to anyone. So we want to be really hyper-focused and go after people who, in a certain industry with a certain problem in a certain way, that if we don't hit up their unique value proposition and their smallest viable market, it sounds counterintuitive because it sounds like we're not going after enough people. But to be specific, to be in your niche, and to talk about solving a specific problem for a specific group of people is so key, or else you'll just get lost in the noise. And I can't see number 11 there. The cameras are blocking it off.
Oh, yeah. That number 11 is that don't acknowledge the business constraints. So one of the biggest constraints a business has is time. So, we encourage mapping out, say, hey, as a team, like Jordan, you're there with 3 people. I'm not sure of Emma, Claire, and Andrew's role, but I'm imagining if they're sitting in this meeting, they're somewhat interested in lead gen. So like as a team, we can devote 15 hours a week or 20 hours a week, and then breaking that up consistently to be able to do that no matter how many leads come into the business. Otherwise, you'll hit an invisible glass ceiling all the time. From your effort will produce results, and then you won't continue that effort, and then your leads will diminish over time. Jimmy, you and I worked together at WorkPack many years ago, and there would be a direct correlation with client visits to revenue coming in over a period of time, and it's exactly the same with lead generation. Now, this is how you get more qualified leads. So we talk about the issues. Now, this is how you get more qualified leads here, is have an in-depth understanding of your clients and markets. Now, you hear this all the time, have an understanding of your clients and markets, but no one really goes into the next level of what you need to have an in-depth understanding of. So it's kind of a hollow sentence, and we actually want to give more context to that today. Secondly, we want to reduce the wasted effort. So much of the lead gen effort and that you'll do probably won't produce results in the instant. But so what we want to do is try to compound or repurpose our effort so we get a compounding effect over time. And then we end up having far more outcomes happen from effort, which is what will improve more qualified leads. We want to have a more effective messaging and value positioning, which comes hand in hand with understanding the in-depth nature of your clients and markets. Now, again, standing out from your competition. it's never been easier for people to start a business, and it's never been easier for businesses to contact potential clients. So how do you stand out from that noise is one of the biggest things that we need to try to do. And a secret to that is the subject matter expertise of the founders and the people inside the business is really hard to compete against. So we have to figure out a way to leverage that. Then be consistent. It will not help if you do lead gen one week and you didn't get it to it the next. It's consistency over time that not only helps you contact the market, but also will help you apply a learning mindset to consistently testing and iterating your approach and trying to tweak certain things to try to get a better result. If you're only doing it sporadically, that learning mindset is really hard to apply because you don't have the consistency of seeing results and effort. Again, it's understanding human psychology, understanding how to position a message to get people's attention and make them aware, get them interested, and then engage, which we'll talk about that later. Alex, I think you're going to miss the bottom two, so I just might finish them off. So give value first before the ask. Too many people ask for time of someone before even giving value. We only have to look at that in our daily lives, where gone are the days where people will work in a management position and then get that hired into that. It's more often than not, people want to actually get paid before doing the work, but human nature, it kind of has to go the other way around. It's exactly the same with lead gen. We want to be highly targeted. You need to know your unique value at each stage of a client's the maturity. You need to have a plan for all competitors. So not all competitors are direct competitors. So it's anything that's vying for the attention of your buying persona, which we'll get into that a little later as well. And you have to aim to create a competitive advantage. It does not make sense for anyone to go head to head with a stronger competitor. We have to figure out a way to be different and to stand out. When I was working for a startup in Australia called Redeye, we knew our biggest competitor, Autodesk, was an American company. So we made a point to spend as much time in large enterprise clients as possible and let them have input into the roadmap, because we knew Autodesk would not do that. They were a big behemoth. They could not turn the ship very quickly, but we could. And the most important part here is avoid areas where you have a disadvantage. You don't want to put all that effort in, which is wasted effort, under number two, and with the likelihood of something not occurring on the side of qualified lead or a sale. So we want to avoid those areas as well. Do you have anything to add in there, Alex, before we move on?
No, I think it's good, mate. I think you've covered it all.
Right. So this is what I'll let you talk to this one, Alex. So I just talked too much on the last one.
Yeah, that's all right. So I think, so I guess this is the journey, I guess, where we look at, and it's not, exact science for everyone, because I think there is some companies who are all sales, some people all marketing. Sometimes marketing plays a big role towards the end of the sales cycle. But essentially particularly for startups, B2B, you go from the journey of the customer not knowing who you are, so total strangers. Then ideally we want to get them to converted, raving fans of our product. So part of that is, I guess, if I take that front half of that funnel or that journey, that's going to be the lead generation. So typically that's the distribution we would look at, like most times. So having, for example, at the beginning, you're probably going to be engaging with hundreds, if not thousands of people. So you want to have a huge amount at the top that are sort of aware of you. And then as they go through that, the sales sort of comes into it. So the idea being that if people just need to know who you are and that you exist, having a one-to-one approach from a sales perspective just doesn't make any sense. But running things like ads or webinars or blogs or content or whatever that is, just to get their attention. And then once they get warmer down that funnel, and it makes sense for someone to actually be introduced and talk to them and demo or actually engage with the market directly, that's when sales sort of comes into it as well. So that's a sort of relationship back and forth. Again, as I said, we work with organizations that are all sales at the front. That's purely reaching out. Some of those larger, more complex markets, complex products definitely warrant that. Whereas some can be marketing the whole way through. Some of those self-service B2B products that can just be purchased with a credit card via a gateway. So it all depends. The same fundamentals, which we'll cover in the webinar, exist across everywhere. But typically we try to say, use the salespeople where it makes the most sense to really engage with the market.
And the first step of this is building the common framework, which is the client maturity scale. So sales could also include founders doing founder-led, right? It's anyone who are involved in actually talking to clients to assisting them towards a close, just for definition there. Okay, so this is what the ideal looks like when it comes to building out a lead generation strategy, right? So we want to actually continually engage with the market. We want to build a lead funnel with a re-engaging and nurturing, and then that will lead into the sales funnel. The challenge is not everyone in the market is exactly the same way and finds everything the same, every piece of functionality or every piece of value, what we think is valuable, they don't think that is all valuable to them in some instances. I know a little bit confusing there, but the problem is that what the market, different companies in different stages of the market find valuable is not what others find valuable. So this is a high level context, but what we want to do is drill down further into mapping out the market. And this is where the client maturity scale comes in. So before we get into that, Alex, you want to talk about this zone 3, and then we can actually go into the 3 zones, and then we'll get into the client maturity scale to give some comment.
Sure. So I think this is probably the most common diagram we use a lot for setting up lead funnels. So on that front end, the one down the bottom there is the main 4 zones they go through, but they're typically, the 4 stages they go to, but that's typically made up of 3 zones, which is a bit confusing, but we'll explain a little bit more. So it's basically before anyone really does anything, this applies frankly for sort of any form of change or any sort of decision making. People need to first have attention. So your people actually need to know you exist, which seems like a bit of a given, but particularly when startups are new to the market, people don't even know they exist, right? So the first stage is how do you grab people's attention to know that you're there? Building awareness in terms of how do you let them know the work you guys do and the problem you solve and the area you play in and what makes you different. And that sort of transitions then into interest, where it's like, okay, now I know who you are, I know where you play, I know what you do. I now want to know, why should I be interested? And the easiest way to think of this is, and I try to be pretty blunt with ourselves when it comes to lead gen. People are busy. People have a lot of stuff in their mind. Why should they care? What have you got to say that's going to be worth their time or their energy or their money or their effort that's going to let them talk to you? So generating that interest. Once they've generated that interest and they're sort of, okay, this sounds like something really good for me, they move into the engage phase, which is obviously activating on, reaching out via a contact page, calling you, booking a meeting, catching up online, sort of whatever that is. So then that's split into the short, medium, long term. So again, with that red line there, I see probably, and again, myself, I've done this in the past, particularly startups and for any sort of company, right? We want to generate new business. I'd say that's the goal for 99% of every company I've ever spoken to, which makes total sense. But the problem is everyone rushes really quickly to, let's reach out to this person to see if they want to buy. Let's find new buyers. And typically, as Gav says a lot, that's always an outcome. So sales is going to be an outcome to what you do. So you can't really go towards that. You've got to sort of influence people further down the funnel. So for the lead funnel, you've got moving our way back from that. You've got, so in zone 1, people who are in the target market, and they aren't typically familiar with the product. So people don't know what they don't know. So they don't even know, maybe there's a problem you solve they haven't thought of. They may have it, but they haven't thought of. Maybe there's awareness of what you're doing. Maybe there's topics they need to learn first before it's worthwhile. Maybe they don't understand the problem enough. Then once they sort of get across that, the next stage will be, hey, we know you exist. We're interested. Now's not the right time, but we've got too much on. Next year we might look at it, or we're a bit busy at the moment. And the right way to ready to talk is right time, right budget, ready to go. So for some context there, I think there's a lot of studies have been done around, typically for B2B, that's between 3 to 5%, usually 3% of the market that is ready to buy from people on average, which 97% means they're either in zone 1 or zone 2, or maybe even not even in that at all. So we need to meet people where they're at. There's no point going to someone who doesn't know you exist to try to pitch them to sell straight away, because they just won't. You need to take them through that step by step to get them to generate interest, understand the problem, and get to the point they're ready to talk. The other point is here, it's really important, is that those in that that engage phase in zone 3, there's more data to say of that 3%, 80% of that, which is a lot of percentages, but 80% of that, people say when they go to purchase something, it's because they've been influenced or they're familiar with the brand. So very, very rarely do people sort of buy, particularly B2B, maybe some of those bigger decisions, of someone they've just met. It's usually someone they've heard of over time, they've seen before, they've met you in the past, they know a friend who's used you, and then that sort of influences that stage there. So the main point of this is we've got to be influencing them and doing things lead long-term lead generation that's going to coax them and walk them down that process. So when they get to the purchase phase, you guys are the obvious answer to go with.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks, mate. So the main part here is capturing their attention, right? How do we stand out from the crowd, or how do we help you stand out from the crowd? And there's a predictability of business growth. So what we want to do is when anyone transitions through a market, whether they use 0, think of a scale of 0, not using anything to do with your product, or to 10 being best in class. There is a transition or a predictable path that you can map out when it comes to from 1 through to 5, through to 8, through to 10. And we want to do that so we can actually start mapping out the issues that exist, so we can actually start marrying up the unique value proposition. So the first thing we want to do here is getting their attention. So with the client maturity scale, as businesses evolve, grow and mature over time, they move through the market. So as this occurs, many different variables change, which can have an impact on your ability to generate leads. And it'll show that not one size fits all lead generation approach won't work, right? So your lead generation strategy needs to focus on meeting people where they are in their journey today and assisting them to the next step, hopefully towards your solution. The earlier, as Alex mentioned, the earlier you can engage them, the more influence you will have and the more trust you will build. People don't want to be pitched, right? They want to be educated, inspired, and entertained and have their interest piqued. You just have to look at any lead generation. The majority of lead generation emails today, if you look at them, they'll say, hey, I do X, Y, and Z. I'm an SEO. How about we schedule 15 minutes in your calendar to have a chat? And you go, they've just completely jumped from the awareness to engage stage and they break rapport. So that's what we want to try to help you avoid. So like, and the stat Alex mentioned before, 82% of buyers purchase from brands they're influenced by before they enter a sales cycle. And we can ignore that or address it. And we can address that in an efficient way if we're just more cognizant of it. So this is the client maturity scale. So this is an overview. We'll give you an example or a template of this after the session today. But basically, if you think about the client maturity scale, 0 being not using anything to do with your solution, and 10 being industry leading. So if we can, you begin mapping out the stages of 0, not doing anything to do with your platform, all the way through to 10, and you will begin to see, if you're a subject matter expert, I'm sure you could quite easily pop this. You can add this into your business quite easily. Now, the key here is to, how does the market evolve, not relying on your product, right? How does a business evolve? Do they add in headcount? Do they add in certain software? Do they develop software but it's not integrated? Then they get to stage 5 and they start integrating software. Or Melissa, if you're still on the call, they do people who host free events for kids, maybe 0, don't do any advertising, through till 10 being a complete chain franchise around the country that has a fully integrated platform. Mapping that out will giving you a sense of how a client might evolve through the market to help begin to shape your value prop. So then out of that, what we want to do is have the key indicators. So what are the key indicators when you're speaking to them that lets you know they're in that stage? Now, if you're a founder and doing this isn't necessarily for you. This is about how we can start extracting your tacit knowledge out onto a page to be able to start communicating what you know about an industry, so others can begin using your value prop or your knowledge to start getting the attention of the market, right? Now, as a business transcends through the market from 0 to 10, they're going to be faced with a certain set of problems and challenges, maybe growing pains or growth problems or revenue problems or risk problems as they go through the market. So we want to begin mapping that out. Then also, we go, where does the buying personas change? So in the early stage, it will more likely be a business owner. But as you get further into the market, that business owner is going to transition out of the day-to-day, and it might go to an operations manager, might go to a HR manager, it might go to a CRO or a COO who might start making those decisions. So we want to actually start mapping out the evolution of the buying personas. So as an example, Melissa, I'll use you again. So maybe in the early stages, you'll go to the business owner who has one site that's a new kids play entertainment space, but maybe then you go into a franchise system, and you know that you'll have to go to an operations manager that may be responsible for all the centers around the country. You just need to be aware of how those buying personas change. And again, your competitors. Now, competitors aren't necessarily your direct competitors. It's whatever's is vying for time. Maybe it's revenue strapped, not a lot of revenue, or a founder's wearing many hats and they can't devote the right amount of time to the function that you help them with. Maybe it's these other things that are vying for the attention of the team. So you want to actually map all that out so you can actually be cognizant of that when you're reaching out to them. And then finally, we start talking about your unique value proposition. What unique value can you offer a customer or a client who is a 1 or a 2 or a 6 or a 7? So we want to actually start getting all that together. And then obviously you can put your potential revenue in each one of those stages. And then you can actually start highlighting your ideal customer segment that you go, oh, right, I think we have a competitive advantage in the scale of 2 to 3, right? Or maybe I have a unique ideal customer segment here. And then maybe again, when they're at 6 and 7, but it's a very different value prop. It's a very different set of problems and challenges that we want to actually highlight in our outreach or our LinkedIn messaging or our blog posts. But it's just being cognizant of that and being able to create a systematic process for outreach, right? Now, this maturity scale, whether your business is around for 6 months or 60 years, you will always be operating in this client maturity scale. And that will allow you to change and tweak your problems. If you're trying to resonate with someone who's a 2 or a 3 with a certain set of problems or challenges and your unique value, and they're not biting, you go, okay, well, maybe that messaging is wrong. I could just tweak that for that stage of growth, right? And you can just start tweaking the ingredients in the maturity scale, but the maturity scale always works. So this is basically the playing field that you will always operate in, right? And then we can start applying a strategy to this maturity scale over time. Do you have anything to add there, Alex?
No, I think you covered all of it. I think some of the examples will help sort of frame some context around some of this stuff.
Yep. Okay. So what we have here is the steps. So we won't go through this now. I will actually send this out, but this is the steps to complete the maturity scale. So how you want to use it once you complete it is you want to use the client maturity scale to sharpen your approach to different market segments, to get their attention, and more importantly, to demonstrate domain expertise. So if you can imagine, you may be targeting someone who's a number 2 on your scale. You're going, hey, I think you're in this, if you're having these problems, the next stage of your business growth, you may be heading into these problems or challenges. And by the way, our platform is designed to help solve that, like things like that. You can actually start positioning yourselves as a subject matter expert to get people interested in speaking to you or engaging or becoming aware of your business. Now, it allows you to get hyper targeted on your ideal customer segments. It'll help you maximize your competitive advantage. It would allow you to go, right, our value, our platform, our feature set, or the outcomes we provide are really tailored for those in the 3 to 4 category. But then we're coming up against the larger competitors in the 7 to 8. We might want to avoid that section, that segment, market segment for now, until we add some more functionality onto the platform, right? When you have this customer maturity scale done, you can then build out a combined short, medium, and long-term approach. that, like what Alex mentioned in zone 1, 2, and 3, that helps your ideal customers avoid problems as they evolve, and then captures the attention of those who may not necessarily be looking for your solution today, but could be next week, right? It'll help you identify who your real competitors are. And it'll help you, like I mentioned, avoid the segments where competitors have an advantage. Now, this is, as an example, this is a maturity scale I've actually done for my business. So it might be a little bit hard to see here in the session, but basically what I have is I've mapped out a founder's journey or a startup's journey from thinking about starting a business but haven't yet, all the way through to have an effective global sales team, right? Now, the next stage is here as a founder might be developing, doing market research and putting together a wireframe concept of their potential solution. The next stage here is about maybe they're still working to support their startup, but are paying others to build their platform before they make the transition. And here is they make the transition into their business full time. So highlighting in here certain problems and challenges, which is I'm struggling to read because it's so small, but you'll be able to see a copy of it. I can start beginning to frame or highlight problems and challenges that founders may not know they're going to encounter when they're going through this journey. It'll also help me to actually develop content to add value first in the market before asking for anything. And then also highlighting the potential competitors that may come up against, like limited funds or, differentiation between other potential people that are speaking about sales. And then what is my unique value? So it allows me to frame and have a systematic approach. So my skill set, or where I think my value is my market segment is between 3, 4, 5, and 7. So I will stick in between that market segment and then just iterate, develop content to help people on that journey transition from 3 to 7 as quick as we can. Now, this is, Alex, you want to talk about how you've developed the client maturity scale for Fly Freely and how you actually use it in client meetings?
Yeah, for sure. So that's, thanks, Jeff. That's, here's one we did with, so Fly Freely, for those who don't know, so they're a drone management platform. So a lot of companies that begin to develop their own drone teams internally. So power, water utilities, councils, construction firms. We've sort of noticed that over time, to Gav's point before, once you see more people and you can map it and say, all right, who are people really early in their journey versus those who are very advanced. And this was a process we did with the whole team to say, let's sort of map out all these different stages. And we also came up with a similar pattern. So for this one here, what we realized is that we mapped it across here. We grouped them into really 5 main steps, or 6, I guess. And we found that you'd probably have stage 0, so people who outsource drones, so still contracting, so they're probably not the right fit for us. They're far too early. They don't really have any drones for us to manage. Whereas stage 1 was people who buy a couple drones, they're just trying a few things out. They just need some basic administrative tools to really keep track of everything. Stage 2 is when they're starting to advance. They're sort of growing a little bit more. Stage 3, they're standardizing and they're getting more advanced. Then for 4 and 5, you're looking at multiple jurisdictions across the country, highly complex AI technology. And we sort of realize across there's different types of categories they fit into, and then where we see people focusing. And so part of this was, so from a front-facing one, we talk to clients. We show them this directly. We actually pop this up on the screen when we first meet with them, and we say, hey, we've had, the team collectively, we've had thousands of conversations with different organizations, and we say, hey, across there, the data is people fit into one of these categories, and for each of these categories, there's things to avoid, there's things you should be doing. So totally irrespective of us, like don't worry about our product, forget about that. Purely of seeing the market of, hey, people like you in this journey, this is what they're going to go through. And by far from a sales perspective, so moving from marketing to sales, it's extremely helpful because it turns a conversation from pitching a product and trying to get that value across to consulting. So almost every single time the person will say, oh, I see, yeah, I think I'm into stage 2, right? I think I'm over here, and I think, I'm having with these issues. And we'll say things like, I'm guessing you're trying to get buy-in from your executive team. It's really difficult to scale. No one's really buying into it. And he's like, yeah, that's exactly right. So it helps us identify there, and then it builds a bit of trust. It turns into like, hey, if I was in your shoes, we can recommend, here's the 3 things that our product can maybe help with. If that's relevant, if it is, great, let's sort of keep talking. But if not, we're happy just to advise where we can. So keeping that sort of positive engagement. And then from a marketing perspective, we use this internally when we look at things and go, well, ideally, the higher they are up all those stages, the bigger the company and the bigger the price will be for us. So like for our CEO and our founders, that's I guess the best part of the market we want to try and aim for. We would love to convert people with hundreds of pilots on their side, but then looking at stage one, we sort of look at going, okay, if I'm outsourcing, for example, that they're not really the right fit for us, how can we develop some demand generation? What content can we do? What webinars can we do? How can we sort of coach them? Or what do they need to hear? What do they need to do to go from 0 to 1? And, it's things like getting started guides, maybe having a quick overview of, what drones exist, some simple use cases, maybe some case studies of people that have gone from 0 to 1. And that then influences us around, okay, when we engage with these people, there's no point, talking about AI and scaling internationally to a company that's just bought their first drone. It's totally irrelevant. We can probably work with both of them, but their needs are going to, as Gav was saying before, their needs are totally different. So when we look at this, we know how to engage, what to talk about, what not to talk about, what they want to hear and what they want to achieve. And then as well before, you can see what, some telltale signs of how to identify where they're at. So internal tool, but as well as external. And every time we show this to people, they'll ask for a copy of it and they go back to their team and go, hey, I think we're here. These guys can help us along this journey if we want to get to, say, a stage 4 in the next 2 years.
Also, kicking the can down the road a little bit is companies who enter these different stages will possibly enter a different type of sales process, and you can develop a strategy around each one of these stages. So naturally, as you transition up these stages, the price increases, different people are involved. As we mentioned before, the different buying committees or buying personas will be involved. So it will require a different approach and a different tool set to communicate value and the reduction of risk and potentially the procurement process as you transcend through the market. So think about this like at your Wet and Wild, and these are different tubes that you can go down to on a water slide. Each one of these stages might indicate a different sales process would need to be employed for each one of these, right? And you can being aware of that and pre-planning that in the future will help you close at the end of the deal, at the end of the day, more sales, right? And then get you more qualified leads.
So, and I think to also, and add on that as well, this the same as Gav's in that first slide as well. I think the best way to think of this is that, 101 go to market is always find your persona, find your value, find the problem you solve. Like we all know that the whole structure, but this sort of adds that next dimension of, yeah, there might be the problem that we solve, but people can come into that space and come out of that space all the time. And sometimes, particularly in the market too, in the last 5 years for these guys, people have gone from most of the market were in a 1 and 2, and now they're moving into 3 and 4. So then it's influenced the product development, it's influenced their messaging, how we can change, how we can adapt. So it's more of like, I guess, the way I sort of think of it, like a dynamic version of the custom persona. And Gav always says, like, map your market. So it just gives you a clear plan to go, well, this is what your market looks like, and this is where the path they'll follow.
Yeah. So when you think about one of the how to improve your qualified leads is standing out from the competition. This is a really key way to do this, because most people in any space are just trying to sell you, opposed to actually giving them value and saying, hey, we know our stuff. We know where you are today, and we know the problems you're going to face if you want to evolve in this market, and we can help you do that. That's a completely different shift of just trying to sell, right? And the sales has moved from the information age. We can no longer give information to the influence age. So we have to be able to influence their thinking and influence how they transition through this maturity curve and maturity scale as quick as they can. And so we'll go into the next stage. So this is probably a classic example of, without filling out all the maturity stage, all the stages there, but this shows here, if we're using Canva and Adobe Illustrator, where the market segments overlap and where Canva's value prop is if they were to do this, right? And it's quite apparent. But in the early days, it wasn't quite apparent where, well, obviously Canva was more simple, but Adobe Illustrator had the potential to knock it over, but it's actually way more complex. So do you want to talk through this a little bit, Alex?
Yeah, sure.
The time as well.
Yep. I'll go through quick. So yeah, this is pretty much the idea that, so for these guys, so obviously their customer segment was those who need design support or design work done. And I know for a long period of time, that was always, Adobe Illustrator was, highly complex. There's people who spend their entire careers perfecting it. You had to outsource. I knew a lot of designers that are now have pivoted their career because Canva sort of knew that having design having accessible design for things like social media brochures and sort of everything in between, there just wasn't a tool. So they've sort of, I feel like they've used this to build the product and to identify what was needed, but then looking to where they market, I think their subject or their product positioning is helping anyone design anything anywhere, or it's like helping design be far more accessible. So whilst there still is, so these highly, complex 3D models that people still need to develop, and there's still the space for that when it gets to those higher level, really specific design briefs. But for the majority of the lower end of the scale, just quick sort of mock-ups, Canva really capitalize on that. And I guess if I was Canva, like there's no point going toe to toe with highly complex systems. We'd probably lose every time. But if they go lower down the scale, I think they just blow them out of the water for price and usability and accessibility. It's so much easier. So looking at their one, I feel like they're sort of 1 to probably 7 is where they fit the most, with a little bit of overlapping on there.
Yep. Cool.
Take you to the next one.
Awesome. So we'll give you a copy of this today. You'll actually put the slides up so you can take down, download a copy of the session slides today, and just use a simple Excel for creating a client maturity scale, and even ChatGPT. You can ask ChatGPT, hey, I'm in this market. If I wanted to map my market out from 0, not using anything to do with the solution I provide, to 10 being best in class, how would you map out 0 to 10 and see? And ChatGPT can give you an outline of some stuff if you get stuck as well. So it works quite well. Now, at the end of the day, you can take that and start implementing that in the business. That will give you a solid framework to start doing your lead gen. Moving on from that, how we potentially might be able to help you is, this is the first lesson of our 60-day lead generation bootcamp. We're about to complete a recent one as well, where we work with participants to develop their effective lead gen and strategy and implementation plan. So we provide guidance from a sales and marketing perspective, and it'll help you develop an effective strategy to address your total addressable market. So it happens in 3 stages. One is the learn and scope, where you think about it in the fundamental value. You're learning the fundamentals of market engagement and how to best approach the market and map it out. The second stage is implement and test. So you start getting linear value there. So learning how to implement across standard channels, how to overlap short, medium, and long-term strategies, and how to have a cascading effect. So you're not doing standalone lead generation tasks that you can't leverage into other strategies. And then the third stage is iterate and scale. So we do once a month reflection and help you actually analyze your lead generation effort and results for a period of time for the next 3 to 6 months after the program's complete. So we could potentially be able to help you with that. What we cover during this is we cover the first principle. So the client maturity scale is one of the first principles we cover. And there's a lot of other foundational strategies we cover as well. And then we help you build your own lead generation process that meets your market where your market is. We mentioned that earlier today. It's an actionable plan. We cover some of the tasks down below, cold emailing. But basically the purpose is to help you learn and structure your own lead gen strategy. But once you have that structure right, then you can begin bringing people in if you wanted to use external providers into your structure and into your strategy, so they actually work as a cohesive unit as well. So we do 18 hours of live course content or recorded, 2 sessions a week, 1 on live content, 1 on group coaching and implementation training, take-home content as well, and a group coaching environment where everyone's learning from each other as well. And that's kicking off on the 16th of April. We're not saying it's a right fit for anyone on this call. What we would recommend is, if you're interested in it, we book in a strategy call just to learn about your lead gen and what your business goals are before we make a recommendation. I put a strategy call link up in the chat before, and during that call, we'll cover what are your sales goals for the year, what's your current lead gen strategy, what challenges are you having in this area, what have you tried, and then out of that, we'll make a recommendation whether maybe you're right for the boot camp, or we can help you in another way. So if you're interested in that, please click that link, and Alex and I, either one of us, will have a chat with you as well. Now, the this is Kevin, who's just gone through the course recently. He's probably got one of the best results. He's a consultant, organizational coach. He actually, he was all over the shop with his lead gen. He said it felt like it was a great reset. He used the client maturity scale to call someone and actually highlighted those problems and his unique value, and very quickly got, I think he got a couple of leads out of it, then converted one into revenue pretty much straight away, which will grow into ongoing engagement with his business. So he's a big proponent of the client maturity scale as such. So that's all we have on the session. Alex, did you want to add anything else in there, or we're open up to questions now? If anyone has any questions, please feel free to just put them in the chat.
Yeah, no, I think I need more to add. More just, one piece of the puzzle. I think lead gens have been doing it for 7 years, and the more I get into it, the more I need to learn. So it's a very much a complex beast. But yeah, try and get that fundamental, almost like the almost like the MVP of your lead funnel. And if we can get that started and get it moving, client maturity scale is definitely the pillar of that. But yeah, if there's anything else, if people on the call want to join in and want to get part of it a little bit more in depth, definitely reach out. Love to have you in the course. But yeah, can you hear any questions from today? Anything we covered or anything we didn't cover that you guys want us to talk a little bit more about?
Well, I'm waiting for some questions. Mel, if you're still on the call, how are you approaching lead gen for your markets into different segments? Do you map the market out first? And the same, I'll ask that question to Jordan and your team as well, with Emily, Claire, and Andrew. Is this different to how you're approaching lead gen at CheckRight? And Jimmy, I'll ask you too, mate. I might as well ask everyone, sorry. We'll give it a couple of minutes. Okay, no worries, Jordan. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, mate. I'd say too, something with the CMS stuff. So we'll send through the how-to guide and the sort of templates. But I found for a couple of different organizations, it's really helpful to even as a brainstorming exercise, like even like on a Friday afternoon, just getting the team together on a whiteboard. And it helps because I think one of the bigger problems, particularly as these companies grow, is that one, your tacit knowledge. Typically, the founders, obviously, it's their brainchild. They've sort of come up with everything. But then the second part is, sometimes marketing brains have a different way of looking at it compared to salespeople, compared to product people, compared to CS people. So I think it's a really, if sort of nothing else, having a bit of a brainstorming session with the team and saying, what do we think people at this stage? And because I know a couple of times I've done this, it really starts interesting conversations where people go, oh, I always thought, that was not a necessity until they're at a 7. And people say, well, no, actually, no, because this is who I deal with every day. And this is why they think that, and they think that way. One here from Melissa.
Yep.
Awesome. Yep. And that's a good point. So number of so even mapping that out. So it's hard to say. That's why we say like a 1 to 10 of maturity, because it varies. Like some places is the number of customers. Some places it's how detail oriented they are. Sometimes it's the revenue size of the company. It varies a bit. So it's not necessarily completely linear. It's sort of as they progress and mature.
That makes sense, Rhiannon. It's just in an infancy stage, but you really got to start. Yeah, starting somewhere is better than starting nowhere, right? And evolving that, you'll be surprised at how your messaging will change once you start getting an understanding, or you position a message and it doesn't resonate, and you go, oh, now I see why I was doing something. I was trying to communicate a certain set of value that wasn't resonating with that market because their problems are something else, right? Mm-hmm. So
absolutely.
Put some different tiers. Yeah, I get you. I understand. We also have, as you said, Gavin, various product types, which puts them in different tiers and suitability for our solution. Absolutely. Yeah, no worries, Rhiannon. All right. Well, just to respect everyone's time and give you maybe 8 minutes back to your day. So if there's anything else we can help you with, please let us know. I hope this was helpful, and have a good afternoon, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
No worries. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Jimmy.